The coffee shop wasn't special. It was the kind of place that existed in every neighborhood: pale wooden tables, a chalkboard menu with half-erased prices, and a bell above the door that rang too loudly. I came there most mornings before work, more out of habit than need. Same seat near the window, same order: black coffee, no sugar. She was always there before me. Always. Sitting at the corner table with her laptop, hair pulled back in a loose bun, eyes soft but unreadable. She wasn't the kind of woman who tried to be noticed. Maybe that's why she was. The first time we spoke, it wasn't really speaking. She handed me a napkin I dropped without looking up from her screen. I said thanks. She just nodded, then went back to typing. After that, it was small things: her remembering my order when the barista forgot, or me refilling the sugar jar when it ran low near her side. Quiet, shared rituals between strangers who didn't admit to noticing each other. I found myself watching the way she stirred her coffee. Always slow, 3 circles, then a pause, like she was thinking of something she'd never say aloud. Sometimes she'd check her phone and frown, a small, private frown, then flip it face down. That's when I started wondering what she wasn't saying. One morning, I came in later than usual. The place was almost empty, except for her, and a little boy standing beside her chair, tears streaking his face. She looked panicked, not because he was crying, but because no one else seemed to care. The boy couldn't have been more than 6. He got separated from his dad outside, she told the barista, voice steady but eyes scanning the door. He said he was following a balloon. I watched her kneel beside him, her hands trembling just enough to show she wasn't used to this, but she stayed calm, patient. She wiped his cheeks with a tissue, offered him her water bottle. Something about that moment hit deeper than it should have. The quiet authority. The tenderness that wasn't performative. The way she looked at a scared child like she'd been scared once, too. When the father finally rushed in, out of breath, thanking her again and again, she just smiled and said, "It's okay. He's safe now." I don't know why I felt proud of her. I didn't even know her name. She didn't notice me watching as she gathered her things, the boys' laughter echoing faintly outside. But when she passed my table, she paused. "You come here often?" she said softly. "Guess so," I replied, smiling too quickly. "Creature of habit." She smiled back, the kind that reached her eyes but stopped just short of warmth. "I've noticed." Then she left, and the air felt a little thinner. Later, at my office, I got a message from HR. "New interim CEO starting next week. Please prepare presentation materials." No name. Just the initials, EM. I stared at the screen for a long time, unsure why my pulse picked up. That night, I found myself typing a message to no one in particular. "Did you make it home okay?" before deleting it. Outside, the streetlights flickered on, one by one. And for the first time in months, I wished morning would come sooner. The days she walked into the office, I almost forgot how to breathe. Same calm posture. Same quiet confidence. But now she wore it like armor, pressed blouse, muted lipstick, the kind of poise that made rooms straighten themselves. "Everyone," the HR manager said. "This is Ms. Alina Moore, our new interim CEO." Alina. Yem. The woman from the cafe. She glanced around the conference room, polite but detached. When her eyes passed over me, I saw a flicker of recognition, quick, uncertain, then gone. I told myself it didn't matter. That we were strangers again. But that night, I couldn't shake the thought of her stirring coffee, 3 slow circles and a pause. A week later, I was working late when she appeared at my desk. The floor was nearly empty, lights humming softly. She held a stack of papers, tired but graceful. "You're still here," she said. "Trying to stay ahead," I replied. "Or pretending to." A small smile. "Pretending counts." She leaned against my desk, scanning the printouts. Up close, she looked different, not just older, but lived in. The kind of beauty that doesn't try to convince anyone. "You do good work," she said quietly. "I've read your reports." "Thank you," I managed. Though I didn't expect my coffee buddy to be my boss. That made her laugh, soft, unguarded. Neither did I. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was full. Like the air between us remembered the mornings we hadn't spoken. She told me then, almost casually, that she had a son. He's the reason I come early to the cafe, she said. It's quiet before the school rush. There was pride in her voice, but also something else, fatigue, maybe. Or loneliness. I told her about my father. How he'd passed a few years ago. How I still found myself saving his number in new phones. I'm sorry, she said, and she meant it. I shrugged. It's fine. You get used to silence after a while. Her eyes softened. You don't. You just learn to carry it better. That line stayed with me. Later, as I helped her pack the papers into her briefcase, our hands brushed, just lightly, but enough to jolt something awake in both of us. She didn't pull away immediately. Neither did I. When she finally stepped back, she looked almost embarrassed. You should go home. It's late. So should you, I said. She hesitated, then smiled faintly. Maybe I will. As she walked toward the elevator, her reflection caught mine in the glass. Two people pretending the moment hadn't happened. I don't know why that stayed with me. Maybe because, for the first time in a long while, it felt like someone finally saw me. I started avoiding the cafe. It wasn't deliberate at first, just late mornings, busier commutes, excuses that sounded reasonable. But truthfully, I didn't know how to see her outside the office anymore. Not after that night, the quiet brush of hands, the way she looked at me like she wasn't supposed to. At work, she was distant again. Professional. Collected. She spoke to everyone evenly, her tone measured, her expression unreadable. But sometimes, when she passed by my desk, her eyes lingered for half a second too long. Tiny moments. That's all we had. Then one afternoon, she called me into her office. The blinds were half drawn. A thin line of sunlight ran across her desk like a crack in glass. I wanted to review your proposal before the board meeting, she said. Her voice was calm, but her fingers toyed with her pen, restless. I handed her the folder, careful not to brush against her hand. Of course. She scanned the first page, nodded. You're thorough. You always are. Something in her tone made it sound less like praise and more like a confession. I hesitated. You seem tired lately. Her eyes flicked up, startled. Then she smiled, faintly, politely. That's part of the job. Still, I said, you shouldn't have to do it all alone. The silence stretched. Long enough that I heard the clock ticking on the wall. Long enough to realize I'd said too much. She leaned back, eyes soft but guarded. Be careful, James. People might misunderstand your kindness. It should have been a warning. It sounded like one. But her voice was almost gentle. The next day, a colleague, one of the senior managers, made a passing comment. You and Ms. Moore seem close, he said, smirking. Late nights, shared files. Should I be jealous? I laughed it off, but my stomach twisted. After that, I noticed how carefully she kept her distance. No more late-night meetings, no more small talk. Her door stayed closed. Her tone cooled. But then one evening, as I was leaving, I saw her sitting alone in the empty conference room, lights dimmed, staring out the window. Papers untouched. I hesitated, then knocked softly. She turned. James! You're still here. So are you. She smiled, tired, real this time. Old habits. I walked in. She didn't tell me to leave. We sat there, side by side, saying nothing. The city below us glowed in quiet golds and blues. Her hand rested on the table, close enough to touch. I could have. I almost did. But then she drew a slow breath and said, barely above a whisper, You should go. I nodded. Stood. But I didn't move right away. Our eyes met, a second too long. A heartbeat too much. If I'd said her name, I think she might have stayed. If she'd said mine, I think I wouldn't have left. It was raining that evening, not hard, just steady. The kind of rain that softened edges and blurred reflections. Most people had already left the building, but she was still there, umbrella half open, standing at the lobby doors like she couldn't decide whether to step out or wait. I offered her mine. I parked close, I said. You can take it. She looked at me, half smiling. You'll get drenched. I don't mind. She hesitated, then shook her head. Walk me, then. We'll share. So we did. 2 people under one small umbrella, moving slowly through the slick pavement, our shoulders touching every few steps. We didn't talk much at first. Just the sound of rain and the hum of distant traffic. Then she asked, almost too casually, "Why did you stop coming to the cafe?" I tried to laugh, but it came out small. Guess I didn't want to blur things. Blur what things? Her tone wasn't sharp, just curious. But I couldn't answer. We stopped at a crosswalk. The light turned red, the rain coming down harder now, forcing us closer together. Her perfume was faint, something floral, clean. I thought maybe you didn't want me around, I said finally. After that night. She exhaled slowly, eyes on the road. You're young, James. And she trailed off. You what? I should know better. Her voice cracked a little on should. We found a small awning by a closed bakery and stood beneath it, dripping and silent. I wasn't supposed to notice you, she said after a while, her hands clutching the umbrella handle. You remind me of a part of myself I left behind. Maybe that part wasn't meant to stay gone, I said before I could stop myself. She looked at me then, really looked. Something in her expression shifted, like the weight she'd been carrying finally tilted. You don't understand, she whispered. I have a son. I have a history. People depend on me. You'd regret I wouldn't. She closed her eyes, and for a moment she didn't move. Just breathed. Don't say that, she murmured. Not unless you mean it. I do. She opened her eyes, and there it was, the storm behind the calm. Her hand trembled as she reached up, brushing rain from my collar. Her fingers lingered a second too long. Then she pulled back, almost as if she'd caught herself in the act. This isn't fair, she said softly. To either of us. I know. The rain slowed. The city lights flickered through the wet glass. Neither of us moved. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something else. Maybe ask something. Maybe stop it before it began. But instead, she whispered, barely audible. Do you ever wish you hadn't met someone? And that was where the silence broke me. She stopped coming to the office early. No quiet mornings in the hallway. No soft greetings by the elevators. Just a polite nod during meetings, distant, rehearsed, professional. It was almost as if that night under the awning hadn't happened. At first, I tried to convince myself it was nothing. People get busy. Life moves. But something in her absence felt deliberate, like a door gently closing, no sound, just air changing temperature. Then came the email. Team, I'll be working remotely for the next 2 weeks. Please direct urgent matters to Mr. Harris. No explanation. No signature warmth. Just flat text. I told myself not to care. She was my boss, not anything. But my chest tightened anyway. For the first time in months, the office felt smaller without her in it. On the 3rd day, I went back to the cafe. The bell over the door still rang too loud. The same table in the corner sat empty. The barista recognized me. Haven't seen you in a while, she said. Your usual? I nodded. Sat down. Tried not to look at the chair she always used. Halfway through my coffee, I saw a kid run past the window, short hair, backpack bouncing. The same boy she'd comforted that first day. Her son. He was holding another man's hand. I didn't mean to stare. But the man looked familiar, vaguely, uncomfortably. Sharp suit, controlled smile. The kind of presence that filled space effortlessly. When they walked past the glass, I heard the barista whisper. That's Ethan Moore. The one who used to run the company before she took over. Her ex-husband. And suddenly, everything tilted. That night I wrote a message. I saw you today. You looked happy. But I didn't send it. Instead, I sat there staring at my phone, thumb hovering over send until the screen dimmed and my reflection stared back, blurred, tired, smaller than I remembered. A week later she returned. Her tone in meetings was lighter. Her laugh, rarer but real. She didn't avoid me, but she didn't linger either. It felt like something had been quietly decided, and I'd missed the moment when it happened. At the end of the day, I walked past her office. The door was half open. She was packing up, humming softly. She saw me, smiled politely. "Good night, James." "Good night." I almost said I missed you. Almost said did you miss me too? But all that came out was a nod. She waited, like maybe she expected more. Then she turned off the light. Outside, the rain had started again, soft, familiar, endless. I didn't feel heartbroken. I felt paused. Like life forgot to finish the sentence. It was late when she called. Not for work. Her voice was too soft for that. "Are you still at the office?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, though I wasn't. I was walking home, jacket pulled tight against the wind. "Could you stop by for a minute? There's something I should return." Her tone made it sound like she wasn't sure if it was a good idea. Which, of course, meant it probably wasn't. She lived in a small townhouse on the quieter side of the city. The porch light flickered. The rain had just stopped, the air still damp. She opened the door before I could knock twice. She was in a sweater and loose jeans, hair pulled back. Not the CEO. Just her. "I didn't know if you'd come," she said. "I didn't either." She smiled, small, tired. "Come in." The kitchen smelled faintly of chamomile and something sweet. Her son's drawings were pinned to the fridge, bright colors, stick figures. Life, unfiltered. She handed me an umbrella. "My umbrella. You left this," she said. "Weeks ago." I laughed softly. "Didn't think I'd see it again." "You always say that," she murmured, half smiling. We stood there, two people who'd run out of excuses to be in the same room, but hadn't quite learned how to leave yet. "James," she said finally, setting her mug down. "About that night. I didn't mean to, you don't have to explain." "But I do." She looked up, eyes steady but wet at the edges. "You deserve that." She took a breath. "My ex, he came back for a meeting. For our son. It reminded me how easily I can lose control of what I build. My job, my peace, my boundaries." I nodded. "And me?" Her gaze flickered. "You weren't supposed to matter." Silence. A long one. Then softly, "But you did." She looked away, blinking fast. "You're kind, James. You listen. You see things people don't. That's rare. But it's also dangerous, because it makes people like me forget what's off limits." I stepped closer, not too close. "You think I don't know what this is?" She didn't answer. Her hands trembled as she folded the edge of a napkin, over and over. "I do," I said. "But knowing doesn't stop it from being real." Her breath caught. "You're too young to confuse connection with rescue. And you're too scared to call it what it is." The words hung there, not loud, not sharp, just true. She looked at me then, really looked. The kind of look that hurts because it's honest. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "If this were different, I know." We stood there for a long moment, the kettle whistling softly in the background, both pretending not to hear it. Then she reached out, touched my sleeve, nothing more, just a small, human touch that said everything she couldn't. "Okay," she breathed. And somehow, that felt like the most honest ending we'd ever get. A year passed quietly. Alina stepped down from her role a few months after that night. She said she wanted to simplify things, though everyone knew she'd built enough credibility to leave on her own terms. The company went on. I stayed. But mornings weren't the same without her in the corner office, the faint sound of her typing just before sunrise. Then one day, I found myself back at that same cafe, the one with the too loud bell and overfilled sugar jar. I hadn't meant to go there, it just happened. The barista still remembered me. "Black coffee, no sugar?" "Yeah," I said, smiling. "Thanks." The place looked smaller now. Or maybe I'd just grown into something else. At 8:47 a.m., the doorbell chimed. I didn't have to look up. Somehow, I already knew. She walked in with the same slow grace, hair tucked behind her ear, scarf draped neatly around her shoulders. She looked lighter. Not younger, just more at ease, like she'd finally exhaled a long-held breath. She noticed me right away. "Still your table," she said softly. "Still your coffee," I replied. She smiled. "You remember that?" "I remember everything." She hesitated for a moment, then sat down across from me. No tension this time. Just quiet familiarity, the kind you earn, not chase. We talked about ordinary things. Her son was thriving, drawing superheroes now instead of stick figures. I moved into a new apartment closer to the office. She'd started consulting. "Less pressure, more peace," she said. There were pauses, but not the heavy kind anymore. Just shared silence, the language we'd both learned to speak fluently. At one point, she looked out the window, fingers wrapped around her mug. "Do you ever think about how small moments change everything?" "Every day," I said. She smiled at that, a soft, knowing smile. The same one from the first day I saw her. When we left, it was sunny for the first time in weeks. The air carried that faint, new warmth that hints at spring. We stood outside, either of us rushing. "I'm glad you came," she said. "I didn't know if I should. I'm glad you did anyway." She reached out, brushed something imaginary off my shoulder, a gesture that didn't need to mean anything, yet somehow meant everything. Then she added, almost like a secret, "I still stir my coffee 3 times. Habit dies slow." I laughed softly. "Good habits should." She smiled, that quiet, grounded kind of smile that feels like closure, not loss. Sometimes I still think about that morning, not as the end of something, but as proof that peace doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it comes in sips of black coffee and a shared silence that finally feels safe. Because some people don't leave. They just stay differently. Did this story stay with you? What kind of quiet, real love stories do you want to hear next?